is Brian. But anyways, there's this group on Facebook, and that I'm trying to participate with them, and they do videos on YouTube. The grumpy old gentleman, which is Mike, Jay, James, Ian, Bob, the guy that's Maca Photos. I can't remember his first name. Well, I'm sorry that I can't remember your name, but you too. I'm sorry. My brain is mush. I guess that's what happens when you get older. I think I've covered everybody that's in that group. But anyways, Bob came up with the topic idea, and that's I guess it's about your collecting. Like how you began your collecting and everything, and how you got to the point where you are now. So in my particular case, basically it's been movie collecting. Like, that's why we, participate in these things, because we have a common topic that we revolve around basically, and that's movies. I don't think I have as many movies as, say, like Jay has. I don't think I'm in that ballpark at all. I think I have a lot of movies. Like a lot of them are Criterions, or quite a lot of them, like a few hundred. I mentioned that in my previous video. Maybe, I've never really counted, but maybe it's like 300, 500. It's got to be more than 300. Maybe it's 500. I don't know. So maybe I have at least more than 1,000 films, or maybe I have 1,500. I don't know exactly. In my apartment, I have 3 bookcases worth of movies, and I have 2 DVD towers, and then I have boxes in my closet in my bedroom of more movies, and I have like maybe 5 stacks of boxes in one part of the closet, and I have maybe 4 stacks of boxes and then in another part of the closet. So I have a lot of movies. And so the only other thing I think that I collect, perhaps, but I don't really do it anymore. Well, no, there's 2 things actually: music and books. So like, when I was a kid, and I was born in 72. So, in the 70s, VCRs really were well, I guess they had them, but they're incredibly expensive. And I read lots of books because I couldn't, see in movies. So sometimes I'd read books that there were movies of. So if I couldn't watch a movie, I could at least read the book. Like The Dark Crystal, for example. I read that book like 9 times. And I liked reading when I was a kid. Like I read The Hobbit 3 times. And I've had a history of reading a lot during my life. Not recently, not within the last, I don't know, maybe it's 10 years or 5 years, or I don't know. I do like reading. I really enjoy reading. Basically nonfiction these days. Like things like books on movies, books on music. I don't know if maybe not books on music entirely. I probably like listening to music more than I like reading about it. I like reading about it to some degree. Some of it's pretty fascinating because I have a guitar, and I think I wanted to play around with a guitar since I was like a kid, and I just didn't. I'm in my 40s, and I said to myself, you're not going to be, you can't go back in time and, play guitar, learn to play guitar back in those days. And hold on, I'll be right back. had to get some water because my last video I was getting really hoarse, doing like a 40-minute video, and I should have prepared more for it. So I got my bottle of water here. So while I talk, anyways, going back to what I'm talking about. So, when I was a kid, I read a lot because I didn't have, we didn't have a VCR for our family. And, so I started off like reading, I guess, well, I read like the classics, but they were written the children's versions, like Edgar Allan Poe and Herman Melville and Dickens, and who else was there? Jack London, Mark Twain, and then I started reading, other books. I read a lot of fantasy, and I think I read a little science fiction, and what else? And then a certain point I read Stephen King books, basically in my middle school years. And I read, at the time when I read those books, it was about the mid-late 80s. And at that particular point, at the time I stopped reading Stephen King books, I had read probably about 2/3 of what he had written. And of course, now he's written much more, obviously. Anyways, so then I started reading film books, and as I discussed in my previous video, this is how I saw pictures from movies, like especially, the last video I did, I was talking about my favorite genre being foreign films. I saw pictures of these foreign movies before I even watched them later on in my teens and my 20s. So, I've collected lots of books in my life, but then I've gotten rid of lots of books in my life because it's just I couldn't, get to them all. In the apartment where I live, there's an attic up above me that I have I'm the only tenant that has the attic above me. And in my attic, I store my books. And one of the subjects of books that I've basically kept, basically all of or most of, is my film book collection. If you look on my videos, if you scroll down, you'll see some streams I did of my boxes of film books. And I don't know if I showed all of my boxes of film books. I have other boxes of books in my attic that have different topics, like books on Japan, poetry books, writing books, history books. But yeah, so I like reading books about movies, like making movies, film criticism, film history, film theory. I find all that fascinating. So that's sort of collecting there. And then before I get into talking about movie collecting, the other thing I collect, but not really anymore that much because I rely more on streaming these days or listening on my iPhone, is music. When I was younger, well, for a while, I was listening to contemporary rock music, meaning in the late 70s and the early 80s, like people like the Police, the Rolling Stones. Well, I don't know if I collected any Rolling Stones. I don't think I collected any Rolling Stones at the time, but I listened to them, and Blondie. And then we got like singles at the time from stores like Burger King, and you get like these promotional things, like I think we had the Bee Gees, on singles. If you remember, people from my era remember the vinyl records. You had the big LPs, and then you had the 45 singles. So like, I think you got some of these singles from places like that, yeah, so I collected like the Police Synchronicity album, like Def Leppard's, what's that song? Autograph or Photograph? Photograph, and Rock of Ages, and you collected all that kind of stuff, and then it went to tapes, and I collected some tapes, but I don't think I collected a huge amount of tapes, just fairly, just a substantial number of tapes, not a huge amount. And then I really started, and as far as my collecting of music goes, then I get into the audio tapes. Well, actually, audio tapes first, I guess. I wanted a CD player, but I didn't get into that until much later. Well, audio tapes in the 80s. I think I started collecting CDs about late 80s, early 90s, maybe. But in about the late 80s, I got tired of contemporary music. And like pop and rock music, so I started listening to classical music, which I was exposed to when I was younger. I used to go to the Cleveland Orchestra, where I originally was born, before I moved here to Connecticut. Back in '85 is when I moved here to Connecticut. but we saw Cleveland Orchestra, my family and I. So, my father exposed me to a lot of classical music, and so I started collecting a lot of classical music, and I had about approximately 100 pieces of classical music, symphonies, ballets, opera, concertos, chamber music. And when I moved away from my house in Connecticut and moved to an apartment, I didn't take it with me, and I didn't really feel compelled to, because at that point in my life, which was about from the mid '90s to 2014, I got back into rock through my brother. He was playing the Doors, and I got into Jim Morrison. I was reading some books about him, and I collected some books about him, and I liked the lyrics of the songs. And then that got me back into rock, and I started collecting classic rock, like the Stones and Zeppelin and the Who, and the Beatles and Pink Floyd. Who else was there at the time? Prince. Who else? A little later on, Guns N' Roses. A little later, I love Nirvana, but at the time when they were around, I wasn't really into them. But now I really love Nirvana. And then after a while, I like some newer artists too, like Lady Gaga. I like a lot. I like Green Day a lot. Alicia Keys I like. Yeah. So, and then as far as my movie collecting goes, so because of the fact that I couldn't have movies when I was younger because they were expensive. I mean, a few people that I knew had laserdisc players, and Jay was talking about these things called CED players. I've never heard of them before, but I do remember the laserdisc players and how you had to flip them over. In fact, one of the films I remember seeing multiple times was the original Star Wars from the '70s, and seeing it in various ways. Like, first way I saw it, was it the first way? I think I saw it on Laserdisc, and they had to flip the disc over, and there's like 2 disc worth of material, so there's like half hour on each side. And then I saw it on HBO when I was visiting my father's friend with my family, and then saw it a few times on TV along with Empire Strikes Back. Then I saw it on video cassette. Then I had it on DVD. I never got the Blu-ray, the original Star Wars. I don't. And so, anyways, I'll get into why I didn't get Blu-rays of everything and all. But so anyways, in about the mid '80s, we got our first VCR. It was a Zenith VCR, and we had an old TV. I think it was from the '70s. I can't even remember the brand of the TV, but it was like a dial TV, and we did replace it at a certain point. I can't remember exactly when that was, but it was this big hulk of a TV. You know, it wasn't a flat screen television. It was a cathode ray type TV, both of those two TVs. And we had, I think we went through 3 VCRs, if I'm not mistaken. At least 2. It must have been 3. Yeah, it was 3. And, you know, so I started collecting videotapes in about the early 90s, maybe. And as Jay mentioned, yes, some tapes were very expensive at the time. Or maybe it was just because I didn't have a job at the time, or maybe because I didn't make a lot of money at my job and I hadn't as many hours as I do now, or my salary wasn't as high, or I can't remember exactly how it goes. I think one of the very first VHS tapes I bought, well, maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe it was North by Northwest. Yeah, but I bought some movies. Maybe E.T. was one of the first our family got. I can't remember exactly. But we started buying, or we, the family, started buying tapes. And I remember, like, one of the things is there's some films I've seen multiple times, and one of the reasons I've watched them so many times is because we didn't have tons of movies to choose from, because we were just starting the collection, you know. I guess I bought the tapes, most of the tapes. In any case, so, you know, I'd watch Kubrick films a lot over again, like Clockwork Orange, The Shining, 2001: A Space Odyssey. You know, so I'd watch those over. Doctor Strangelove. And there's, like, the James Bond movie called The Spy Who Loved Me. I love that movie. I love the starting. I love the ending. I thought it was a lot of fun to watch. And I wore the tape down. So I had to get another tape. And then I got the DVD of it. I think I might have talked about that at some point in one of my videos about The Spy Who Loved Me. Oh yeah, maybe it was the Bond video I did called Bond, James Bond, where I get into detail about the Bond films I like and my collecting of them and all that stuff. In any case, so we had less films to choose from. And I only had like 3 Bond films, like Goldfinger, of course, Spy Who Loved Me, and On Her Majesty's Secret Service, which I think are the best Bond films. So, in the early 2000s, I think it was about 2001, I bought my first DVD player, and I started buying DVDs. And it was great because they had all these special features on them. And although, you know, films like Lord of the Rings, it's pretty entertaining. It's a pretty entertaining set of movies. I don't like the fact. Well, I don't know if it's something to be. I just find I don't see the comparison when they do the ads, when they did the ads for Return of the King, comparing it to Lawrence of Arabia. Lawrence of Arabia is a way better movie. It's one of my favorite movies, Lawrence of Arabia, than any Lord of the Rings movie could be, you know. But I have watched the Lord of the Rings films a few times, you know, because they're very entertaining movies. And I like the fact with the Lord of the Rings extended edition box sets, and they were like one of the first sets of DVDs I bought. They had extreme detail. They told you everything in the kitchen sink as far as the makings of the movies go. They have 4 commentaries, so it was like 20 hours worth of special features. And so I would start collecting a lot of movies in the early 2000s. You know, I would go for sales. You know, like I'd buy Disney films, other movies, not just Disney movies, but like big studio movies. The first week they came out, because I think they were cheaper in that particular case, and I'd buy them at places like Best Buy and Circuit City. And at the time, there was a Borders, and I bought a lot of movies at Borders. I started buying Criterions there. Oh, and as far as my first, I got to backtrack a second here. My first DVD, there's two DVDs I think I can think of that were my first two. I think these were my first two. One of them was American Beauty, which my brother and his wife gave me, and I think it was called the Awards Edition. I have all my DVDs. I got rid of a lot of my VHS. I kept some of my VHS, and I do have a VHS player, and the flat screen television I have has um, VCR jacks, and I've specifically bought them because when I bought the TV, it was 2014 or 15. I can't remember exactly when, but I specifically bought that TV because I wanted to get jacks that would accept a VCR. But the VCR just is sitting up in the attic. And the video cassettes that I have, like, there's only one I think of that doesn't have a DVD or Blu-ray equivalent, except, well, it does have a Blu-ray. It's Napoleon by Abel Gance, which is a silent French film. The videotape is the Francis Ford Coppola 4-hour, 15-minute version. I believe that's the length. But I managed to find the Blu-ray version, that's a UK version, through Mrs. Torrance, if you will, if you know what that means. And so, that's the longer version. And I think it comes from the British Blu-ray, which is like, excuse me, over 5 hours long. So I'd like to put that onto a blank DVD. I probably need more than one DVD. Anyways, so I started collecting a lot of DVDs. Lots of studios, Disney, Pixar, and Criterions. I started collecting Criterions and box sets here and there, various types of things. Indiana Jones, Alien. I'm looking over at my bookcases to see what I think I have some box sets in my closet too. I can't remember. I think I tried to put some of my box sets over in my bookcase. My 007 box sets, my James Bond box sets, my Kubrick box set, Die Hard box set, some Criterion box sets, Alfred Hitchcock box set, Godfather box set, Twilight Zone original TV show box set, Jodorowsky box set, just a lot of stuff. Ingmar Bergman box sets, So, anyways, so the other first DVD I got besides American Beauty was 8.5, the Criterion version. So I believe that was my first Criterion. And at a certain point, Blu-ray came on the scene, and I'm a late comer to the Blu-ray. Well, maybe not really a late comer now, but I started buying Blu-rays is either the end of 2014, or it must have been the end of 2014. At the time when I started buying my first Blu-rays, they were both dual formats, which means they came with a DVD as well. Like some Criterions I bought, like Test by Roman Polanski and Throne of Blood by Kurosawa. And when I got my first Blu-ray player, and I got a flat screen television to go with it, and I think I've never replaced that Blu-ray player. No, I haven't. Anyways, I don't know exactly what my first Blu-ray was. I mean, I told you Throne of Blood and Test, but as far as, and Scanners was another Criterion by Cronenberg, and but as far as like my first film that was just a Blu-ray. I just can't remember for some reason. Um, in any event, so I've ended up with a lot of movies. I've bought a lot of movies, and at a certain point, oh, I'm trying to remember when I found out about the Barnes and Noble sales on Criterion's twice a year. I can't remember when that started. When I started buying Criterion's from Barnes and Noble, because Borders went out of business at a certain point, and the Barnes and Noble near me has never sell the AV stuff, or if it has, it's just like books on CD. But and I mostly have bought them online, Barnes and Noble, Criterion's when the sale happens. But then I start buying in a few stores, like one at a store near in a few cities away from me, and or towns or whatever. And then one where my cousin lives in Vermont, and another one in upstate New York. In any event, so that helped me to save money, even though I bought a ton of movies and I spent a lot of money. And so I've ended up with a lot of movies in my life. I've got other I've only upgraded some of my DVDs to Blu-rays that I think would really benefit. Like Lawrence of Arabia, one of my favorite movies of all time. And I'm thinking of participating in this, what you guys call this, like 1,000 movies of your favorite 1,000 movies. I don't think I can go 1,000, but I have a bunch of favorite movies. I have like a 10 out of top 10, which I've done on my channel. And I think I've shown my other favorite films. Maybe I'll do a rehash of that and I'll do it again. Because I think I do have sort of a top 10, but they can be replaced by other films by the same directors and other films by other directors. So I think I have like a top 40, top 50 or something like that. Yeah, but I haven't felt the need to replace most of my movies that are on DVD to Blu-ray. It's just throwing more money away. Maybe Taxi Driver would look fascinating in Blu-ray. I don't know. There's a few movies I have that I thought maybe I should get the Blu-ray. One of them is Fight Club. I love Fight Club. I know a lot. I remember a lot of the lines from it. Like this fight scenes in the basement, maybe they look better on Blu-ray, because if you watch them on DVD, it's, because it's in a darkly lit room, maybe the shadows, the contrast, the lighting is much more clearer on Blu-ray. I'm sure it does look fine, but I just, like I say, can't keep throwing money away. And I do like my edition of Fight Club because it has very in-depth making of stuff, all the storyboards. And I like the way it's presented, the way the menu is presented in it and everything, because I hear on the Blu-ray Fight Club, David Fincher did like a practical joke where he put the menu for Never Been Kissed by Drew Barrymore on it. So that doesn't really appeal to me, but I'm sure the Blu-ray looks beautiful. So, and I've thought of replacing other films. Like I have a Voight-Kampff special case, like of Blade Runner, the 25th anniversary edition, and the box set is designed like a Voight-Kampff briefcase, like in the movie, and it's got a toy unicorn, origami unicorn. It's got a spinner car in it. It's got a, what do you call that? I can't think of the name of it. A lenticular cover, lenticular piece of glass with Harrison Ford moving his gun like this, and it's got artwork, storyboards in it. Beautiful, but I don't see the need to replace it. And sometimes I work at a library in the basement. They sell used and new Blu-rays and DVDs, and I have replaced some of my stuff with like new Blu-rays, like Schindler's List. Even though I thought maybe it looks fine enough on DVD, or the Matrix box set because maybe it looks better on Blu-ray. But I'll still buy DVDs, even if Blu-rays are way better, because maybe they have more, maybe the DVD has more special features, or it's just cheaper, If it's a film I've never seen before, not seen, that I don't have, rather, whether I've seen it or not. If it's a film I don't have, basically these days I'm going to buy the Blu-ray. If it's in the library where I work and it's in the basement, and they only have the DVD of it, but it's maybe it has a lot of special features, or it's a film I'm interested in, I'll buy the DVD. So a DVD is not a deal breaker for me. As far as the 4K thing goes, I'm not into that. That's just throwing more money down the toilet for me. I just can't do that. I mean, I want to take a trip to Japan. I have thought Criterion has flash sales as well. When you think of sales, Barnes and Noble has sales twice a year on Criterion's. And usually it's July and November. But I believe it's twice a year, Criterion has a 24-hour flash sale. They don't give you any notice when it happens. But I think the pattern they usually adopt is February and October. But last year it was March, because I think people were on to the fact it was February. And maybe somebody from Criterion might be watching this video right now and saying, you guys, I don't know. They might be hearing things on the internet, not just me, like say people that, keep abreast of all these Criterion news. They'll say, oh yeah, we know that a lot of you, they notice that a lot of people are getting the fact that the flash sales might be in February, because like it's a recurring pattern. So I think that's why they moved it to March. I'm just guessing on all this, because there's a bunch of Criterions are going to be released, and I think it's the February list that I got. And if you want to get the flash sale information, just sign up to their email, their newsletter, and you'll get the notice. But of course, you only have 24 hours to participate. So, all right, that's very long-winded explanation of my collecting. I don't collect as much as I used to. I used to buy 2 to 4 movies a week, and I don't do that anymore. I haven't done that for quite some time. The only time I really go crazy is with these Barnes and Noble sales, the Criterion sales. Recently, I bought a few arrows. And that a YouTuber named Aaron Pinn from Canada, he does a lot. He's done a lot of streams, and he's been recommending arrows a lot. And I was persuaded, and another person on YouTube, Sasha, aka Sexy Monkey, I think he has a fair amount of arrows, or he's gotten arrows because they have a lot of special features, maybe better transfers. So I bought a few arrows because I borrowed the Female Prisoner Scorpion Japanese films from a box set from a friend of mine, and they were fantastic. Lots of special features. I was really impressed with the box set. So I bought my own box set of it, and just so I bought a few more, which I've shown in some videos previous to this, pretty recent videos. So I guess I talked myself out about all this collecting, and I don't feel the need to get a 4K a player or a television. Just maybe it'd be way, way, way down the road, like 10 years from now or 20 years from now. I mean, I got other things to think about, like taking a trip to Japan and some other things are I have more pressing issues with that. Some things are of more concern at the moment right now to me, and maybe some guitar stuff because I'm into. That's the thing. Maybe another thing I would say that I collect would be guitars. Even though I only have two guitars, I have a Fender Squire Bullet Stratocaster, which was the first one I bought because Jimi Hendrix plays one, and well, he's when he was alive, he played one. And David Gilmour, Pink Floyd, plays one. But I also wanted the Epiphone Les Paul Special 2, which is a cheaper version of the Gibson Les Paul. And I bought that because guitarists like Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin and Slash or Guns N' Roses play those. And they have different sounds. Like the Fender Squire Bullet Stratocaster is more of a clear sound, and the Epiphone Les Paul is more of a thunderous kind of a sound. And those are the two big ones. But I've also begun to learn by starting to discover more about the guitar world that the Telecaster is a pretty big guitar too. And I had no idea that Led Zeppelin one was done on a Telecaster. I was always under the impression that Jimmy Page did it on a Gibson Les Paul. The guitar he used was Jeff Beck's Telecaster that he got when they were in the Yardbirds. That's of course that's not relating to movies, and I even thought of buying an Epiphone SG. Epiphone SG is played by people like well, not an Epiphone, but the Gibson company that owns Epiphone, just like Fender owns Squire. The Epiphone SG is owned by, the Gibson SG. One of the guitarists that plays it is Angus Young of AC/DC. But Telecaster would be the next guitar I'd buy if I was going to buy another one. But I don't know. I got bills to pay. So, anyways, I talked myself out. You've got my history here, and anyways, thank you if you've gone this far watching this video, and I'll see you in the near future. I've been working on some GarageBand songs, so I guess that's it. Thanks for watching, and I'll leave you. And any comments are welcome. Bye now. More thing I wanted to mention, and I thought of, how I put in subtitles in my videos because I forget to say things when I record stuff, so I put them in my videos. And this will be very short here. I just want to say what I have to say. I forgot to say it. I stream a lot. I have Netflix. I have Criterion Channel, which I highly recommend if you want to save money on Criterions. If you want to watch some of the Criterion collection movies that they have on disc, they also have on the channel with the special features, the commentary, everything. Some of them they just had the film, and they also have other films that are not in the collection. And they've got a boatload of movies. I don't know if it's 1,000. I don't know. It's a lot of movies. It's at least a few hundred, I believe, right on the channel right this very moment. It's like $100 a year, or $10 a month. And they also have special series where they cover like women directors. They're doing one called queer cinema, like gay cinema. They're doing what else do they do? They cover art theaters in America, like Walter Reed Theater in New York City. Some theaters in Texas. That are some that are in the Pacific Northwest. I think California. They have Saturday Matinee for kids. It's not really kids like you have for Netflix. It doesn't really have that much. So I wouldn't recommend it for kids because it doesn't really have much you can get for kids. But digressing there for a second. Did I say women filmmakers? Martin Scorsese's World Cinema Project's on it, which also has, I think, other films that he's promoting that are not on the box sets, and other things too. Like interviews with filmmakers. But anyways, that's another streaming source. And then I get Shudder, which is a horror streaming source, and I get that basically for Joe Bob Briggs, because he's a film critic, and even if the film is bad, what he has to say about it is very interesting. And he also has some interesting information, just commentary on general, that not related to movies. That's fascinating. He's got some good jokes, and Darcy the Mail Girl hands him mail about people that watch a show and have good things to say about him. So he's really entertaining. So for just that fact alone, I have Shudder. And, I wouldn't mind. I think I have watched a few things off of Shudder, but like Joe Bob Briggs is the reason why I have it. Originally, I got it because of Black Christmas, and I wanted to watch Black Christmas. And I have Movie, which is like Criterion Channel. It's got art films, European film, new art films, foreign movies, classic Hollywood films, short films, documentaries. And yeah, so and they have 30 films a day. They take one off, they put another one on each day. So yeah, and I think that covers it. And I have a few other streaming sources that I don't have to pay for, like my music. I tend to listen to that on Spotify with the ads. So you have to give and take a little. I guess you can't have everything. I have thought of subscribing to Amazon Prime because my friend says that you can get more access to more movies without paying for them. So I'm considering getting that in the new year, sometime in 2020 maybe. Yeah, so that's all I wanted to say. So now definitely bye now. Comments are welcome.